Okay, so the difference between a sovereign person and a slave has everything to do with your lifespan. Like everything to do with your lifespan. And so I see on my Facebook, people I used to know and everything, and they have kids, and they're taking their kids to the doctors to get implants, to get nipped and tucked and altered because something isn't going right in their machinery. And so, the parent is a slave to the system, yes, because they're willing to give their life. They've adopted somebody else's purpose, made it their own, and they're steadily aging and degrading, and so they're giving their life to the company, to somebody else, and they're teaching their kids to do that. And so that's what a slave is when you are willingly giving your life. Because what happens when you're not useful anymore? Well, the company lets you go. You're supposed to have some kind of retirement or savings, and then you pass away peacefully. That's the modus operandi of a slave system, of where the overseer has you think that this is all there is. Your worth is based upon what they think you're worth. And when you're not worth your weight in salt, they then say, okay, we're going to release you to the retirement system and let the government determine your worth, of which then the government will give you pennies on the dollar unless you have saved money over time. But even then, with the way things go sometimes, that's not even enough. So that's why people move to different places in the country, because it's cheaper living. Because where they used to live, giving their money and their time and their blood, sweat, and tears to a company or a city, even the retirement isn't enough to keep them, accustomed to a lifestyle that they're used to. And so the ultimate freedom is not to die for your friends and family. The ultimate freedom is not to die for a company. The ultimate freedom is not to die for even an economy. You can still contribute to an economy, a company, to your friends and family. But if you pass away through natural causes, then you've become a slave to your friends, your family, the company, the city, the economy. But that slave mentality did not come out of a vacuum. Yeah, you may have been taught by your predecessors, but where did your predecessors learn that mentality? Okay, they learned it 5,000, 6,000 years ago when the religious wars, like real religious wars, when the Jews turned into the Christians, and you had the Muslims, and you had the Chinese and Confucius and all of that, and then you had Genghis Khan, and you had all the different holy wars throughout the ages. The slave mentality was taught by higher powered beings. And then also the path to freedom, relative freedom, was also taught by higher beings. So I'm looking at, I talked about Genesis the other day, but then Exodus actually is really when the Jews that were enslaved by the pharaohs were very, very treacherous. They were ruthless, and they could have been reptilian. They could have been alien, enslaving the humans. They built the prototypes, and then they did the whole fruitful and multiply. Used the people to build the pyramids. Okay, so they took probably like the farmers, and they took all the humans that were here that kind of learned stuff throughout the ages, and they came in and they won whatever war that was waged 5,000 years ago. Because I'm sure, just like with the whole, the devil and the angel on your shoulder, that probably could be traced back to the yin and the yang, the good and the evil, back in antiquity, when man was being fought over as an actual commodity. And man is still being used as a commodity. Like we haven't let go of that mentality. It's still deep within our DNA, because That's the reptilian brain. So I make all these connections because it makes sense. You know, the reptilian brain, when it's not super evolved, it is based upon fight, flight, or flee, FUCK, and then another F. There's like 4 Fs. I forget what that is. But that's the baser level instincts of a slave mentality. Now, so here's the thing. Our system has figured out how to take the slave mentality and give different proponents of evolution, so that way certain people in society rise above a little bit over other people in society, but they're only going to rise just enough. And then when they rise too high, then they find a way to knock you down. And that is a slave system. But it's like, since they haven't figured out indefinite life, and that's where the jelly juice comes from. Jelly juice actually is the freaking freedom. Indefinite life is where you're able to then pick and choose, not be pigeonholed into a specific career field, into a specific idea or thought or belief system. That now you have the whole world at your beck and call, and you don't need too much, and you don't need too little. You know how to make just enough. You're regenerating your currency within your body, and your body and your currency is then translated into currency out there to go and feed yourself, clothe yourself, protect yourself from things out there that are dangerous. And so that's the ultimate freedom, when you're not dependent upon someone else 100% to keep you alive, of which many people out there are dependent upon the companies, the government, and their community to keep them alive, because they haven't figured out really how to keep themselves alive, and especially not on an indefinite basis. And so the slave mentality, yes, does come from the days of the pyramid. It does come from Exodus. And then a lot of the rulers, like the Roman, emperors, and even other despots and dictators, they've taken on that reptilian type of brain. They've taken on that way of ruling with an iron fist, because it worked for them. Hey, everybody. It works when you have a workforce that's not highly evolved, that will just take orders and will believe whatever it is that you tell them. That's so easy to manipulate. If all you have to do is go on TV or make a movie about something or someone, and it's believed just like that, because no one really knows how to do anything else but believe what somebody says, then yeah, you can totally direct a population to believe or to think any way you want. And so I think over time, humanity has evolved. The internet has really catapulted the evolution of mankind, because now we have access to information that we ordinarily wouldn't have access to. However, filtering through the bullshit and filtering, finding the diamonds and the eggs, finding the actual precious information, and then then making the connections, does take a higher level intelligence. So just because we have the internet with all this information, it's great, but it still takes a higher form of intelligence to pick out the actual facts and then create a truth from that fact that will sustain freedom, indefinite life, and balance. Because you can take facts and create a truth and promote death, imbalance, chaos, war, and division. And you already see it on the news. You already see it in articles out there that purposely gaslight people into hating somebody else. So you already see that you can take a fact and create a truth, and here's the outcome. So that's why I always say the outcome is a freaking intention. Because you can take one fact and create 2 truths and have 2 different outcomes, but it's the same fact. That's the kicker and all. Oh yeah, we have antibodies. Oh, antibodies are great. Yeah, they are. But if you have an imbalance, they're not so great. But if you sell the antibiotics are great on the front end, but no one's really looking at the back end, because they've accepted the back end that's going to be leaking, it's going to be leaking energy, and you're going to be aging. But they're all happy with the front end. You can sell a lifespan to people and then tweak them along the way. And then have them teach their kids, oh yeah, all you gotta do when you don't feel good is you go get this tweaked and that tweaked and this nipped and that nipped and tucked and all. And then, you're being poked and prodded and manipulated and gaslighted. And then one day you have to retire. And the only joy you have is with your kids, which, okay, great. Or grandkids. And then you look forward to figuring out where you're going to put your plot, your headstone. You're filling out all your paperwork on who's going to get your house, your car. And already your family and your close friends are trying to figure out what they would get if you were to pass away. That's the joy of slave mentality, is how can you capitalize on somebody else's productivity without really without really earning it yourself. And so I really think that the subconscious, the things that spoke to me, like in my dreams, like I have thoughts in my dreams, and I think of myself, but I think also too that I am part of a greater universe, that when I think of these things, like you see I post on Facebook just like in the middle of the night, like 7 hours ago, and I'm like, what is it? It's like 12 and 7 hours ago or something. Or it's like 8 and it's 7 hours ago I posted something. It's because something came to me during my sleep, and I had to post it because it sounded so good. Now, how did I think of that? Maybe it wasn't me. Maybe it was a higher power, the subconscious direction from spirits with no body that have learned hard lessons, and now they want to help those that are struggling or trying to get to a certain point of evolution. And so, yeah, I mean, you're given a life on this earth, and if you don't value your life on this earth, I mean, being a spirit floating around is great. It's no different than being on Facebook and being a virtual typer and helping people or hurting people. I mean, that's no different than the bad spirits that come into your house because you left an opening. It's like a troll on Facebook trying to harass you. Okay, so we're actually practicing a virtual spirit world on social media, because unless you know someone physically, the only way you can get to them is through a virtual, non-bodied way of communication. And so yeah, so our time here on Earth is like a snapshot of what could be heaven, so to speak, if you earned that balance. But you have to be able to graduate from the reptilian brain and actually evolve and face your evolution, face the pain, deal with all the hard stuff that you ran away from that was taught to you from your overseers from 5 or 6, 7,000, 8,000 years ago. When the reason why they would nip and tuck and cure you is because you get back in the game again and keep making money for the man and the woman. They couldn't afford for you to take off time to evolve, and they didn't have really what it would take to help you evolve. I mean, they probably did, but to tell people, okay, well, for you to evolve, you're going to have to spend some time dealing with your psoriasis. It's going to be pretty exponential, and you have a lot of anomalies. And so we'll pay you for that month or 2 or 3 or 5 so you can go and heal. Now, that's not any overseer, any employer's mentality, is to allow you to take off so you can evolve. You're going to have to fit that shit in. And some people don't have time to fit that shit in because they have kids. They have other jobs. They have friends. They have hobbies. And so evolution never is a priority because of what their overseer and their government has taught them to fill up their time in between going to work and taking time off. Then you're distracted by the football and all the things out there, the drama, the politics, and evolution never comes into play because you're constantly being manipulated into devolving. And so, yeah, you're going to see, let me tell you, you're going to see so many people now exemplifying the slave mentality, very happy they're on their way out the door at some point. And it's going to, if you're on the J juice, it's going to kind of disgust you a little bit, but then you realize that was bred into us for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And to evolve from thousands and thousands and thousands of years of a mentality bred into us, it's virtually impossible for most people out there. The ones that get it, the ones that get Jilly Juice, the ones that get the slave mentality versus the sovereign body, they were probably already predisposed to that. They already had that intuition because somehow they have some kind of other DNA in the body that gave them that opening that just wasn't flexed or exercised because the reptilian brain was still very much, very much in control. Just like when you have the devil and the angel on your shoulder, who do you pick? It just depends on what is more in control. And so when you have more imbalances, then the devil is going to be more of a temptation than being a good person, right? Whatever that means. And so I really think that there are definitely different races on this earth with different DNA. I believe that. There are people that are very, very evil and very, very mean. And I'm sure, yes, it has to do with imbalances, but they probably were very, manipulated by there are probably evil creatures out there in the universe. So there's always going to be a battle of good and evil because guess what? You have two hemispheres, right? So you have the analytical side and you have the creative side. You have the yin side and you have the yang side. Not saying that any of them are evil, but when you have such a conglomeration of one and that one conglomeration of one antibody turns into an actual entity, and then they are just out to kill because that's all. There's no balance. So the only thing you can do is destroy. So that's why there's evil creatures in the world because it's such an unbalance that there's no balance. So it's just a condensed version of an aspect of you that causes issues if you don't balance out your biochemistry. So just imagine putting that, in an alien, and then that alien is coming to your house. You're like, holy shit. And that's all the movies, right? Like Signs and, all those alien movies where they're evil. But then you have the good movies, like let's say Disney. Glenda the Good Witch. She could have been a Pleiadian. All the kind creatures in Disney are probably like the Pleiadians and all or maybe Arcturians or whatever. These are different alien races, right? And then, the evil stepmother, the witch, like, Maleficent and what's her name, the octopus. They're like the condensed version of the yin and the yang. Or yin or yang, not both. Because if you had a balance of both, you wouldn't be evil, you'd be balanced. But evil comes from imbalances on such a condensed level. And so that's why, you don't have everybody in the world totally evil because mostly people are relatively balanced based upon the expectations of our society. But then you do have, that we saw in the 1970s, especially out right on the heels of all the different experiments and everything, Kinsey and the MK Ultra and then the whole drug generation. And then you have someone like Richard Ramirez and you have Ted Bundy or whatever his name is, Bundy, and oh my God, the Green River Killer and this, and and then they even had someone like Jack the Ripper back in London. So I would imagine that they were biomanipulated to see how evil could a person be. And that probably would emulate something in the universe, on a galactic level, the good and the evil. And so you have to have a balance of both so that way your boundaries don't get crossed, that you can pull out the reptilian side of you if you need to. Maybe why the Pleiadians are so good, but they're not in flesh form is because they allowed the love to then cause people to cross boundaries or cause entities to cross boundaries, of which then took away their flesh suit. Okay? And then you have the evil reptilians that are in a flesh suit, but they're so evil because they have now the means to be it. And so that's what they survive on. And then humans can be a balance of both. So maybe that's why we are the great experiment too, as far as the humans. There was a war, like I didn't watch the whole movie. I think I saw part of it, but they're like, yeah, 5,000 years ago, there was a war for humans. I believe that. Especially when you have to always choose between, the devil and the angel on your shoulder, but you don't have to. Now it's just, you won't have to choose because your balance is going to choose for you. You're not going to have to actively choose anymore. It's not going to be like, okay, should I be good or should I be bad? You'll just do what's right, whatever right is. It won't have a good or bad to it. But when you're being manipulated by entities out there that are very condensed and very imbalanced, then yes, you have to make a choice. You got to pick the white angel or the black angel. You got to pick chocolate or vanilla. And sometimes it does happen to have to happen that way. Sometimes it doesn't. You can have a mixture of both and still be okay. So, yeah. So the slave mentality. Yep. You're going to see it. Those on the J juice, you're seeing a glimpse of what freedom is like. You're seeing a glimpse. When you don't have to keep reacting to your predispositions or reacting to what someone said, did, or whatever. You just block, delete, shut off communication and move on, and there's nothing else that needs to be said. That's the most amazing power. That's the most amazing power. And then you still want your enemies to figure it out because I keep doing YouTube videos. You know why? For all my trolls. You know why? Because hopefully one day I'll reach them. Not because I want them to troll me anymore. I don't really care anymore. But I know they want to live. That's why they're doing this. That's why they're being a troll, because they want to live. Okay? And I think it's a fight within them. Just like 5,000 years ago, the fight between good and evil, and looks like reptilians are winning in some people. But we don't want to have just a good and evil fight. We want a balance of both, because you still have to draw your boundaries. You still got to be a bitch when you have to be. But you pick and choose the appropriate times to set your boundaries. Because you can't be all Pleiadian love, love, love. And then, and then not have a boundary, and then some reptilian comes in and just eats you alive. No. You got to have a balance of both reptilian and Pleiadian. So then you become a very well-balanced person who protects yourself and can still live indefinitely. And that makes a lot of freaking sense. Because that's the main things that I've heard throughout my experience on Facebook. The two prominent ones. I've heard of Arcturians, but I don't really hear too much, but it's always the reptilians, it's always the Pleiadians. It's always those two extremes. Why is that? Oh, because they are a combination of our yin and yang in our lymphatic system. You got to balance both of them out. They both have a purpose, but too much of one will cause imbalances. All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.